Okay, so I'm really happy to introduce Paz de la Calzada today. And I'm thankful that you're all here and thank the instructors who brought you here today. This event is sponsored and co-presented by the Thacher Gallery, as well as Theology and Religious Studies, the Lane Center, and University Ministry. So Paz has been on campus before. She did the labyrinth out on the lawn out here about 5 years ago. So it's more of a welcome back situation today. She is a native of Spain, but is a San Francisco-based artist working with site-specific drawing and temporary projects like we have here. And she's really interested in the way that they directly interact with the public and the local community. So in this case, this piece, we're the local community. As we continue today's talk, think about that. She's really interested in the city as a place, as well as daily rituals, and her art attempts to transform the relationship we have with the urban environment and with ourselves. The Nomadic Labyrinth is a traveling interactive piece, and like I said, it started in 2013 with the St. Ignatius Church's gallery, the Manresa Gallery. And since then, it's been to about 6 or 7 other locations in the city, and outside of the city, maybe a little bit too. So it's returning. The other piece, this piece, Portale, is brand new and was created specifically for where we're standing here. And it's not very often you get to stand on a piece of art, so make sure you do that, right? Paz's work has been shown nationally and internationally, including the San Jose Museum of Art, the De Young Museum, Yerba Buena Center for the Arts, as well as museums and art centers in Spain and Mexico. For today's event, she'll be talking about her process, her work with communities, and specifically her intentions with Portale and the Labyrinth. So we're starting the talk here. We're going to move up to the 3rd floor where the Labyrinth is, where once the talk is over, you can walk the Labyrinth, enjoy a reception, turn in your evaluations, and also ask Paz questions on your own. So enjoy the day. Thanks. Thank you, Paz.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you, everyone. I'm excited to be here for the second time in 5 years, presenting my site-specific work in this case. And I want to thank the Thacher Gallery, the University of San Francisco, and Glory, and all the assistants that have helped physically to install these carpets. My name is Paz de la Calzada. I'm originally from the south of Spain, and I've been here 14 years. So I can say proudly that I'm a San Franciscan at this point. And I'm interested in this city now. I've lived in Madrid and in Mexico City in the past, but I'm interested in the city as a lab where, as an artist, you get to experiment with community, with buildings, with the citizens, and with all the chaos and the order, because it's all about chaos and order and that balance. I'm also interested in the daily rituals that we do with ourselves and with the community, both rituals, pagan rituals, like religious rituals, and also non-religious ones, like the daily life that we have. And talking about daily life, most of the materials that I use in my projects, they come from daily life. They can be recycled carpets, they can be recycled clothes, fabrics, even recycled charcoal. The work that I do is mostly site-specific, and I want to clarify what site-specific means in this context. Site-specific is the work that you do considering the space where you are. Not only the dialogue with the architecture, but how do you comment on social issues that are affecting the same community that occupies that space. And I think that it's interesting to clarify that, because a lot of people think that a project that is site-specific is just only physically made for a certain space. But I think that there is something beyond that, it has to touch other disciplines, other flavors. In this case, this piece, Portale, when Glory asked me if I want to come back, of course I said yes, I want to come back to the USF. And she offered me to do a site-specific project for this. The main thing that grabbed my attention was this portal, a little facade of a church that was brought by the DeYoung, I don't know when, was it like in the 70s, I guess, or?
Yeah, I don't know that.
But anyway, so this was brought from a chapel of the penitents in the north of Italy. And it was placed here after a donation that the DeYoung gave to the university. And it represents Adam and Eve and the tree of life. So I see this, and she asked me to do a site-specific intervention here. And of course, I need to consider, why is this monument here, and why do we have Adam and Eve and the tree of life, and what is this doing in an academic setting? So that gave me an opportunity to actually look at the history, and the way that I envisioned this was like, okay, let's do something that playfully engage not only the physical portal, but also the meaning and connotations that the fact that we have a monument that is being imported, that is being immigrated, or that is being brought to a different context. What does it mean? So I decided to do this that you see here. It is a combination of two patterns that, like this pattern that you see here, as soon as you cross this portal, which portal also means gate to another world, it can be seen as a gate to another world. I took this opportunity to actually transform this pattern, and I'm going to explain where this pattern comes from, but transforming this pattern, and as soon as you enter through the portal, becomes something else. And some of you have observed that the patterns here, they're completely different than the pattern here. So the pattern here is a pattern that I found from the north of Italy, from a few basilicas in the north of Italy. Most likely the basilica where this portal was brought, and it's a very typical north of Italy kind of three-dimensional pattern. Now, the other pattern, I found it at the Basilica Dolores in the Mission. Many of you have been probably there. So if you look at the ceiling, that pattern it was painted by the Oloni tribe while the Spaniards were building that church. So as a Spaniard, that also brings a lot of issues, around cultural appropriation, culture and power, the dynamics between culture and power. So, so that's how I decided to do this. And also the carpets, they're recycled from one is recycled from a hotel in San Francisco. This is from the Palace, which kind of symbolizes, wealthy life or something. And this other pattern is actually from USF, from the University of San Francisco. I believe it was an old carpet from the library. And if you look also at the patterns, this pattern looks very European, right? It looks very French, Italian, European. And this other one kind of looks more like the rugs that the Native American and other cultures would be doing. So I thought that it was a good combination to bring these two recycled items into this. Let's see, what else can I talk about? Yes, there's one important thing that I forgot to say. The main medium that I use is drawing. I mean, my work is I studied fine arts in Spain and Mexico City, and I've been drawing my whole life. So drawing is a very big material that I use. It's a very big process that I'm invested. However, in the last 10, 15 years, I've expanded my art practice to other mediums. And as I said before, recycling objects, recycling materials like carpets or fabrics have been part of this process. When I do a site-specific drawing or I use a carpet, which for me this is a drawing too, because it's kind of like interacting with a surface, right? So I call them drawings, and I actually call them inhabitable drawings because in certain cases, the drawing is kind of erasing the limits that the architecture normally impose on us as citizens. Like the architecture tells us, this is a door, you need to live through that door. That's a window, don't throw yourself through the window. This is a wall, you can hang art here, but don't try to, like the architecture is limiting us in many, many ways. And with my art practice, I try to erase those limits. Therefore, the art pieces are the ones who are enabling us to inhabit that specific space. I think that's pretty much it, unless that I'm forgetting something, but maybe we can have some questions before we go upstairs to the labyrinth. Oh, another thing was the intention of having something here interacting with the portal was because on the third floor, I have a piece that I created 5 years ago in collaboration with the Manresa Gallery, which is part of campus, and in St. Ignatius Church, and also the City of San Francisco, the Arts Commission. And it's an interactive, mobile, temporary public art project that brings an spiritual tool like the labyrinth in a very different, playful context. So it's an urban meditation tool. I can describe it like that. And it's created with a lot of carpets as well from casinos and hotels from the Bay Area. I can talk a little bit more about that piece when we are up here, but the whole point of having this is connecting through the portal, connecting these as a passage to the labyrinth on the third floor. Am I forgetting something, Gloria, that I should say?
I'd be curious, are there questions?
Yeah, like if there are questions, yeah, Jennifer.
Hi.
Hi.
The first thing I was struck by when I walked in here was people weren't sure whether they could walk on this or not.
Uh-huh.
And I think that just based on this and what we're going to see upstairs, like if you could talk for a second about just art as a substance you walk on.
Right.
To you as somebody who's gone on pilgrimages and gone on journeys.
Yeah, that's a very good question. Yeah, this is meant to be walked. I mean, these are carpets, and they're carpets from hotels, so they resist anything that you can imagine, champagne, you name it. So they're very good quality carpets. Some of the tiles may fall off. That doesn't really matter. We'll put them back in. And I'm interested also in pilgrimage. And as Jennifer pointed out here, there is a relationship between, for example, the labyrinth as a spiritual tool and the fact that we are all walking. Actually, walking the labyrinth is kind of a metaphor of our own life. So the fact that this is a small journey that we are walking, it can relate to our own lives. Yeah, I don't know if that answers that question. To questions?
Do you think about who is going to be walking, so that this is a space for students getting educated? Was that a part of your thinking as well, like the who part?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it definitely was. I mean, I wouldn't envision this in any other place other than a place of transit. And I'm interested particularly in places where people walk every day, because I think that a site-specific project has to somehow change the perception. So the way, if you change your perception, you will change the way that you see all the world. And I'm interested in that, in changing how we see this lobby. This lobby's been, sometimes I've seen art kind of like around here. This is more taking over, spaces where people are going to say, oh, can I step on this? Why not? You just try and see how it feels. So yeah, it's had in consideration that it's going to have a lot of traffic, and absolutely, and it can be walked. It can be totally walked. Does anybody has any other question? Let's see if I'm.
It's just a follow-up question, which is just, as an artist, when you're making something, you have to look down on physically, because it's just different when you pin up a drawing or a painting on the wall to figure out what you're doing versus just, yeah.
Mm-hmm. It is actually very similar to do a drawing, because we normally, when we draw, we're normally drawing in a, like flat, and we have this perspective with the drawing. It's just the scale is different, but I've always felt like something that is small has a better relationship with something that is really, really big, versus, the intermediate sizes. I always say that I never do work that is medium size. I do work that is very small, meaning that I can have it in a piece of paper and I can control it with my hand, or work that I can control it with my body. And I think that my approach to art is always been very physical. Like, how do we relate physically with the object? So in this case, that's why, these interventions, I call them drawings too, because they start on a piece of paper with my hand, and then they come bigger. But it's actually the same thing. You're like physically living in that space. Yeah. Is there any other questions?
Question is thinking about the students that are here, and I would just be curious, how do you come to your projects? Do people come to you? Do you see a space and then go to the owners of the building and ask them, how does that work?
Mm-hmm. Well, both things, both things. In an ideal world, everybody would call you and you don't have to call anybody, right? That's what, as artists, we think that is going to happen. And it happens, like, for example, when you call me, hey, would like to do something like this. But for example, my first project at the University of San Francisco, it was me that I wanted to find a space that was connected with academia and with some sort of spiritual or sacred space, like a church or something. So I thought about University of San Francisco as one of the main places where the labyrinth could be placed. And it was pretty easy target because they were both interested in having something like the labyrinth, who is a pagan. It is pagan, but it was adopted by churches in the 12th to the 13th century. So in that sense, it was I offered them like, hey, I'm doing this. Would you be interested in doing something? I don't know, giving a little presentation, giving a workshop. We did a workshop actually on how to draw a finger labyrinth. So there was a lot of activities at that time to do that. So it all depends, Sometimes I never approach galleries because it's not my main interest to like show my work in a gallery, precisely because it's then I'm supporting the architecture has more power than your work, and you want to actually trespass those limits. So I'm more interested in like having a commission of a mural or painting a mural with a school, or going to a festival and encourage people to do something with me all together, public art projects, especially if they're temporary, and you can work with things that the community can bring, like their own clothes, their own fabrics, their own carpets. They can draw together. I think I'm more interested in that, in the community component. So, yeah, it's a mix of both things, Yeah. Yes.
You spoke a little bit about how you saw architecture as limiting spaces. Do you ever find that architecture contributes or influences?
Yeah. No, I'm not saying that architecture is a limit to yourself. I'm saying that there's a hierarchy in architecture. The same way that there is a power control in many things in our life, from the government, from the university, from the teacher of a class, from the architecture. I'm not questioning. I love architecture. I'm just saying that by erasing the norms that architecture is telling you. I mean, architecture is not telling me to do a project in the floor, like per se. It's giving me options to put my work, here or here, but not, So what I'm saying is that we have the possibility to actually go beyond that, questioning those limits. I'm not saying that those limits are bad per se. I'm just saying that it's actually interesting to expand that idea that work is just an object versus work as something that you can actually cohabitate. You're part of it, and if it gets damaged, or it's the same way as a tile will get damaged, it's not something that you have to protect, and it's something that you actually live with. I don't know if that answers your question, but I'm not saying that architecture is bad. Actually, I love architecture. It's just, actually, the more interesting the architecture is, the more I want to engage with it. The more difficult it is, the more challenging it is, and for me, it's a good challenge. Yeah. Actually, I actually think that drawing and this kind of interventions, or any kind of intervention, any kind of mural, enhances the qualities of architecture. It can enhance the texture. It can diminish a little bit the hierarchy, the control, the rationality behind those walls, It just make the architecture more human, more human. Yeah. I mean, you can lie down here. That makes you more comfortable, right? Yeah.
Is there, earlier you chose the diamond shape that has, I was curious to see.
Yeah. It's actually a very common pattern from basilicas in north of Italy. The basilica in Siena, Venice, and Padua. The three of them, they have this pattern. So I guess it was a typical pattern from those times, kind of Renaissance, I want to say, Renaissance times. And it has like an interesting three-dimensional effect that many of you have already noticed. If you put your eyes like this, it's kind of like, it looks like cubes are coming out of the floor. Yes, that's, and the other one, I don't know if you were here, the other one is is a Native American pattern found in Basilica Dolores in San Francisco that was painted by hand by the Ohlone tribe when they were, I want to say, in prison or invited to paint for the conquistadors. Yeah. Yeah. Any more questions or thoughts? Yeah, so I invite you all to go through here. And let's go upstairs and we can maybe walk I can talk a little bit about the labyrinth, or maybe you can ask questions and Go, Jennifer, go for it.
Do you have anything down here? Oh, you have your back. I'm just gonna go upstairs and make sure everyone gets there the right way.
Yeah, thank you. You know, funny, because it's quite funny to walk this labyrinth, you know. You're stepping into like the wealthy real estate of San Francisco, but you're also stepping into the mysteries of this Arabic culture. So it's a fully walkable labyrinth, and there's no right or wrong way to walk a labyrinth. You just enter the labyrinth, respect people that are walking the labyrinth, and once you get into the center is the time to receive, and then you walk it back, and that's the time to internalize it. So first you prepare to receive, you receive, and then you internalize it. So who wants to be first? I'll be first. How about that? But people have to come, you know?
Come on.
I traced it out with my eye. Yeah.
This isn't a performance piece.
Don't get confused. There's a few tricky parts. If you don't get to the center in like 2 minutes, you took the wrong turn.
I'm trying to keep up with you. The whole point is to do it fast.
Yeah. You're just slowing me down at this point. Right.
I use, so there is 2 different kinds of patterns happening here, 2 different kinds of worlds mixed in here. One is the world of the wealthy casinos and hotels, you know, the real estate, the high real estate of the Bay Area, with all the, you know, luxurious patterns.
Sure.
And also there is the pattern of the labyrinth itself, how the labyrinth is designed. I designed it, but I was inspired by an Arabic floral design that I saw in a mosque in Morocco 6 years ago, 6 or 7 years, like 6 years ago. So that inspired me to do something that, you know, it's a mix of different cultures, you know, like the Bay Area with the wealthy casinos from one side, the labyrinth with the pattern, with, you know, it's a traditional spiritual tool, pagan, but also Christian in many ways, and the Arabic shape of the labyrinth. It's also creating these dynamics, you know, these interesting dynamics of different cultures and different patterns.
Awesome.
So yeah, it's kind of like an irony if you think about it. You know, using these carpets and transforming these into a spiritual tool. So it's kind of like changing, transforming. It's like alchemy. You're transforming essentially the meaning of these carpets into something else, because now they become something sacred. You don't, you know, they come from places where, you know, they're luxurious and all that, but here they mean something else, especially because they've been shaped into a floral pattern that comes from a mosque. So I think that's what I was saying. I also was telling about how you walk the labyrinth. There's no good or right way of walking a labyrinth. it's just intuitive. People know how to walk the labyrinth. Now, there is 3 phases, and this is there is an organization in the Bay Area that is based on Grace Cathedral. It's called Veriditas, and the website is veriditas.org. And Lauren Artres is the woman who's been researching about the labyrinth all over the world, and she's phenomenal. So she came up with this idea that actually walking the labyrinth has like three phases. One is like from when you walk in to the center. The other phase is like when you're in the center, which is when you're receiving, and then your way back, which is the same way as you came on the way in. So, but other than that, everyone should walk the labyrinth and it's on its own pace. You know, you can do it fast, you can do it slow. Just respect people when you're crossing, and that's it. That's pretty much it. The labyrinth is, they say it is a metaphor of our own journey in life. So they say that we walk the labyrinth the same way that we walk or we address issues in our life. So it helps us to kind of like be present in the moment, be more in our bodies. And they also say that because you go on the right and on the left the same amounts of time, it balances your left and your right brain, part of your brain. So you get more balance, which walking does that too. But if you're walking and you're like going on the left and on the side, that's even more pronunciated.
Yeah.
Yeah.